This is a very important quote. If I have seen further, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants, by Sir Isaac Newton. It shows that the information from earlier works, from people who have actually gone before you, is important for you to progress in your research career or in any career. Because by understanding the works that have been done before and knowing how to cite properly, you are actually showing that you have understand how to access knowledge, how to use knowledge, and how to cite knowledge so that the earlier people are recognized for the work that they have done. Today's class is citing earlier works. This is MQB7001 research method. It is part of the Master of Public Health course in the University of Malaya. Hi, I'm Professor Dr. Victor Ho from the Department of Social Preventive Medicine, Faculty of Medicine, University of Malaya. Why should we cite earlier work? Let us pause and think. First is to serve, first attribution serve as a fact checking tools. It's important, which means that you need to be able to show that the information you have presented in your write-up is actually evidence that was generated by works that other people have done. So attribution actually is good for you to show that you have basically consulted earlier literature. And citation makes you a better researcher because it shows that you have systematically assessed the current information that's available before progressing to do your research. And good citation practice makes you a better writer. This is not just about in research that you're currently doing in your Master of Public Health. This is also about research that you're going to be doing during your career. It can be short research or long important research, or it can just be reviewing document that your bosses want you to do. But by citing earlier work, you're giving evidence or you're giving strength to your argument that other people have done it before. So good citation practice makes you a better writer. Good bibliography shows off your scientific skill. We're talking about bibliography, which means that how you cite the paper. So bibliography is a science of, it's a library science. We're basically talking about how to cite paper properly. And by citing paper properly, it shows that you understand the concept or the science of bibliography. And basically, it shows that you are able to use scientific knowledge and access scientific knowledge in a systematic manner. Careful citation practice will build your credibility as a scientist and scholar. Yes, this is very important, as we mentioned, that it is not us that actually created the knowledge. It is the knowledge that comes before us is also important. And how do we enhance the knowledge that comes before us? By by understanding and knowing the knowledge that comes before us, is then we will be able to cite properly, and then you'll be able to become a more credible scientist and scholar. Citation enables better verification of your work. This is one of the things that we need to understand, that by citing, it shows that you have gone through the work they have done before you, and also it shows you that what you're doing now is based on evidence or based on works that have been done before. You're just updating the work, or you're just improving on the work. And what improvement are you going to involve in your individual research? So citation actually enables you to verify your work. So the question now is, how should we cite and when should we cite? And as was discussed yesterday, we are talking about, do we cite in every sentence or not? How do we cite? That basically we would provide an example of how to cite properly and how to look at it from the perspective of citing in the context of write-up. We also need to understand that one of the issues about citation is basically plagiarizing other people's work. By citation, we actually try to reduce or avoid plagiarism. But even with citation, we still can consider to be plagiarizing other people's work. So it's important for you to understand how to avoid plagiarism. So when talking about plagiarism and citation, you are not supposed to just cite or just pick up the sentence from the paper and then transfer it to your write-up without changing it, without understanding it, without taking into it as what we call internalization. Internalize the information before you actually rewrite the information. So read and understand before you cite. So reading and understanding the materials that you are using is important. Understand what's the message of the author wants to share. So it's important for you to understand what the author of the paper wants to share. It is important for you to cite properly, because if you have not understand the message that the author wants to share, you'll be basically citing something that is different from the author's conclusion or what the authors want. And this will basically reflect badly if the author is coming to become your examiner, or if the examiner is one of the have read the author's paper and understand that the meaning of the paper is different from the meaning that you have actually presented. So it is important for you to understand the message that the author wants to share, and you should cite the author based on the message that the author want to share. It's not based on what you think of the author want to share. Internalize the idea and put it in your own words. That is what we are always trying to emphasize, is for you to internalize or make it your own, so that you can actually call it your own. So take some time and digest the information, totally internalize the information. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is very simple. Simply, plagiarism is copy, repeat, fake, borrow, or steal someone's work and call it your own. It derived from the Latin word to kidnap. So it's important for you to understand that you need to be able to write in your own words and don't plagiarize other people's work. And that is important. Let us continue to see what is plagiarism. There are different types. Collusion. Collusion means that this is where you are working with one or more other people when you should be working alone. This is also a form of plagiarism. Copy, when using someone else's work without giving reference to it. That's why learning how to cite properly is important, which basically you are giving reference to the work that the person have actually done. Paraphrasing. This is very common. People paraphrase. This is reading someone else's work and then writing out in your own word. We are not talking about rewording the word that the person have actually written, but understanding the word the person have written and then write it in your own idea of what the person actually have said. You cannot use it without citing it properly. You need to cite the work the person have done. Using your own work without proper citation is also a form of plagiarism. And that is a lot of Thai people do use that. It can include resubmitting an entire paper. This is basically talking about your assignment paper. If you have failed your assignment earlier and then you resubmit the same paper, or you resubmit the same paper to different course, or you submit the same paper when you go doing different program, that is called plagiarism. And if that is caught, and that can be caught because most of the time currently all assignment or some of the assignment are published and are available for people to reference, and with that reference is picked up or you have basically put in your assignment into a plagiarism detection software like Turnitin, then it can be picked up. So it's important for you to cite properly and don't resubmit your homework. Copying and paraphrasing passages from your previous work is also a form of plagiarism, and this is called self-plagiarism. So where should I get the information from? So basically, when you're reading a journal, all right, or reading a manuscript that from a journal paper, all right, this is where we encourage you to get information from. We encourage you to get information from reading journal paper, the latest journal paper. And when do you, what do you mean by latest? It depends on the information that you want to get. When is the latest, and what is the duration that you want to do? We encourage, or the rule of the thumb is 10 years. 10 years from the date that you start your research. 10 years. That means you're doing your research now in 2023. You will look for paper that's from 2013 onwards. But there are some instances where you can actually cite paper that's 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and even 50 years old. And these are basically pertinent paper or important papers that actually change the way people think, or change the theory behind the area of research you're doing it, or basically it is basically a question or instrument that has been used by the person. So it's important for you to understand when to cite the duration and what is the duration. So if you're talking about prevalence, of course, you need to cite the most recent one, less than 5 years. But you're just looking at theoretical framework, theoretical issue, or other things, then it can be more than 10 years. So it is not just that the 10 years is not a hard and fast rule, it's just a rule of thumb that it is better for you to cite paper is less than 10 years. So now we focus on why should I get the information from? We understand that the the manuscript is actually written in normal manuscript, or most of the manuscript is written with these five areas, which is abstract, introduction, methods, result, and discussion. Not just talking about manuscript, but even your uh, research report, research dissertation, or research thesis also comes in these five main section or main chapters, which is the abstract, the introduction, or then the literature review, then the method, results, and the discussion. So it's important for you to know when, where to look for the information and where to cite the information. Never cite from only reading the abstract alone. Always check the fact in the full text. It's important for you to understand that when you are citing just based on the abstract, the information in abstract is basically very short, and it might not reflect the full nature of what the author tells you, or what is a finding. And the abstract itself is sometimes can be misleading. So it's important for you not to cite the abstract only. And this is very important because there are a lot of people who cite abstracts, and then we know that the person did not read the paper because the paper is not in English. The paper is in other language that the author or the student does not understand. And that basically reflect that you did not actually read the whole paper, and you are just citing from the abstract itself. And that basically would make it difficult for us to verify the information is correct. And also it shows that you are not a good scholar in the context that you did not actually read and critique the paper before you just cite the paper. So it's important to read and critique the paper to cite the paper. Introduction is only good for inspiration, and it's not the work of the author. Read the original title work instead. A lot of the time we cite from introduction also, because the introduction, the author actually have summarized a lot of information in the introduction, and we think that okay, this is the good way to cite, because this is where where the information has been summarized and has been done, has a good context to it. But if you cite the information from the introduction itself, it might be different from the title of the research paper. So when we are reading the your thesis or your report or your dissertation, we do refer back to the title of the paper, and they find that this paper does not actually the research is not focused on this, and that is where things can go very wrong, which means that you are not looking at the author's work, you are just looking at the introduction, which is not the author's work. It's just that the author telling you what is there in this world, what has been done, and that is the thing that you should not do. Never cite the introduction. Then we go to methods. Methods is a very interesting scope or concept. You should cite the methods if you want to use the same method or similar method in your paper or in your research or in your thesis, dissertation or report. Then you can cite the author and the method section together. Say that this is how the author conducted the method using this method, and I'm going to use this method. So it can be done this way. But if you are not using the similar method, the information in the method section is just for you to check the validity of the result of the report or of the paper that you're reading. So what do we have left? We have result and discussion, and that is the two areas that where you need to cite, because citing the result is citing the fact, citing what the author have found, and that is where it shows that this is about the author who have found the result, and citing that will reflect the title of the paper. So this is where you have to cite. So citing the fact, finding the facts, citing the findings of the research. When you cite the discussion, it's about citing opinion of the author. It's good to cite the discussion sometimes. Basically, when you think that the discussion is very important or very pertinent for you to actually ensure that your research is going to be justify that why you want to do your research. So citing the discussion is important. And as we discussed, you should only cite the information of discussion if you value the thoughts of the author. That means the thoughts of the author is important to provide you with justification to conduct your study or in the discussion that you're going to write. And the author is an authoritative figure in your field. As I discussed in the previous lecture, talking about authoritative figure, what is the meaning of authoritative figure? Now we will discuss on hierarchy of evidence. So we understand evidence comes in different hierarchy or different levels. Of course, the highest, the top is systematic review with meta-analysis, followed by systematic review, then narrative review, then original research. When talk about original research, this can be cross-sectional study, cohort study, or intervention study, like a randomized control trial, or your before-after trial. It is important. It is not that it is difficult to actually what we call give that in another hierarchy, because it all depends on the research that you are doing, and based on the research that you are doing, the different trial would have different value to your research. That is important for you, because some of the research you cannot get intervention study, so you cannot say that this is the top, this is the thing that I want to do. But you still can get narrative review, systematic review, or systematic review with meta-analysis. Then of course we have case report and case study. These are things that people see in the clinic or in the population, and then they write up a case report, case study. Case report, case study is important when you're looking at new things that have not been seen before, or new things that is just noticed by the person. So case report, case study should be there, but you should not dominate the literature review that you're coming out with. And expert opinion, as we mentioned, expert opinion is something that should be limited. when we want to use it in your paper, but it can be there one or two expert opinion to actually give some idea of what the expert actually focusing on or thinking about. So what is the importance of hierarchy of evidence in citation? I think we have discussed that earlier, right? So it's important for you to understand the hierarchy of the evidence, and it is important for you to find papers with higher with its higher on the hierarchy standing, so that your information are much more global instead of local, and instead of individual, like your expert opinion is an individual opinion. Now let us focus on an example. This is an example of the paper that I have written for one of my master's report or dissertation. All right. So I wrote a thesis or dissertation on determinant of multi-site musculoskeletal disorder among school teachers in Malaysia. As we discussed earlier in the previous lecture, we talked about my inspiration, and my inspiration was the Professor Dr. David Colgan, and he was talking about multi-site musculoskeletal disorder is much better than single site, much more common than a single site musculoskeletal disorder, and the risk factor or the associated factors between multi-site and single site musculoskeletal disorder is different, and multi-site musculoskeletal disorder is more related to psychological than just physical factors alone. So that was why my interest in this paper, and also the school teacher is because we have actually have a research that focus on the cluster research. Cluster is basically clustering of risk factor among teachers in Malaysia. This research is led by Prof. Moy, Fong Ming, and of course we have other researchers within the group. So I'm going to outline chapters and to show you the chapter 1 and chapter 2, how I structured my chapter, so that you can form an example of how you want to structure your chapter. If you look at chapter 1, is introduction. So introduction would basically talk about burden of musculoskeletal disorder, cause of the musculoskeletal disorder. That means how much the company is losing, how much the country is losing based on the musculoskeletal disorder. And then we focus on risk factor musculoskeletal disorder and teachers, and basically talking about why we focus on teachers, and then we come up with the justification on why we want to do the study. Then I have an extra chapter, chapter 2, because this report is not for in Malaysia. This report is basically for my Masters of Occupational Safety and Health, which I took in Turin, in Italy. So I want to put a context and provide a context to the people actually read the paper to understand where my population is and what is the importance of my population. So I put the background of Malaysia, background of school system in Malaysia, and background of the study that actually provided the data for my research, which is a cluster study. This provide the reader with an idea that what I'm doing, and this is a secondary data, which is very important, and focus on the issue that this data is coming from a bigger study. It's not that my study actually do it. So that is the thing about not just about citation, but about how you write a paper, how you write. Then you look at my introduction. My introduction or my literature review. My literature review have basically a introduction on the literature review, which tells the people what I want to do in my literature review, how I want to structure my literature review. It's important to provide a short introduction, one paragraph introduction, to tell people that in this literature review, this is going to be structured this way. I'm going to discuss on certain areas, and then before I actually move on to them. So if you take time to actually go through the sub headings of my literature review, you understand that it covers almost everything about the musculoskeletal disorder. We start off with the burden. All right, so burden is very important because burden is justify why you want to do such a research. So burden of musculoskeletal disorder among workers, burden of musculoskeletal disorder among workers in Malaysia, and summary of burdens. Then we look at risk factor, and then we have extrinsic risk factor and intrinsic risk factor. Then we focus on the title of the topic. Why did I focus on multi-site musculoskeletal disorder? And we talk about multi-site musculoskeletal disorder in general population and in working population. And then we have summary findings on multi-site musculoskeletal disorder. Then we talk about musculoskeletal disorder among teacher. What do we know now? What are the prevalence? What are the risk factor? What are the individual risk factor? What are the workplace physical and psychosocial factor? And what musculoskeletal disorder among teacher in Malaysia? So this will provide a background on the things that we're going to do and think how we're going to come out with the what. Just to mention, this Masters of Occupational Safety and Health is a 1-year master, almost similar to what you're doing. So so the research component is around 6 months research, but of course this is not full time. All right. So the work that goes into it is the same. It is important for us to understand that it's not the amount of time that you spend, amount of work you spend, but also is look at it from the perspective that you need to be able to come out with a good literature review. This is just a literature review. This is not the part of your study, not part of your what you're going to do, but it's just a literature review. So that's why we look at the literature review. So I would highlight to you two paragraphs in my introduction and show you how I cite the information that is available. So let us spend time to read this paragraph before we continue. So work-related musculoskeletal disorder, MSD, are the most common occupational disorder around the world and have been recognized as a problem since the 17th century by Bernardino Ramazzini, the father of occupational medicine, where he observed that a variety of conditions were caused by prolonged, violent, and irregular motion and prolonged posture. He also observed upper limb problem among professional writers, where the risk was prolonged static posture, high repetitive work, and attention to details. Then in the second paragraph, MSDs include a wide range of inflammatory and degenerative conditions affecting the muscle, tendon, ligament, joints, peripheral nerve, supporting blood vessels. MSD can be divided into specific conditions with clear diagnostic criteria and pathological findings, and non-specific condition where the main complaint is pain or tenderness, or both with limited or no pathological findings. Example, low back pain or neck pain. So this is how I cite the paper. So for the first sentence, as discussed during the last lecture, is whether we cite every sentence or not. Actually, it depends, but you can cite sentences, and you said the other question is whether how can we combine the two together. We combine the two together, two paper, and then cite the two paper inside one. So if you look at this, what I have presented is that the information actually comes from two sources. All right, Ramazzini B, the disease workers related to started of Latin work, the Morris Altificum diatriba, which is basically published in 1964, and also another one which is published in 2001. So these two actually provide the information and provide the discussion. That's why I cite the two one. I think the second one is the one that I use, but the second one refers to the first paper, which is basically what we need to also look at it, whether the information in the second paper is adequate. That's why I cited both paper 1 and 2. So this is then the thing goes on where the second sentence I would use the same citation, which is our second bibliograph citation. Then for the third sentence, basically we have three different citations. It looks from the perspective of where the thing comes from. As I mentioned, sometimes all these things, if you don't have current information, you can use more than 10 years, but usually you don't go so far back. But we do sometimes we do need to do it. Then we have musculoskeletal disorder. All right, so include the inflammatory and degenerative function and things and what, and these are information that what we call, you don't have to have too current information because the science doesn't change, correct? And it's an inflammatory and degenerative disorder, correct? We cannot say that it is not. It is definitely is. So, but what we need to do is we need to just find the author which is more prominent. Like Punnett is prominent, Buckle PW is also prominent in the field. So basically, we just cite those two authors which is prominent in the field. Then we go back and then we use the same citation again, all right? And that will basically summarize everything. So the idea of citation, of how you cite properly, how you do properly, is that if you look at what I have presented, all right, the two sentences that you see here, the two paragraphs that you see here, there are actually 8 citations there, and it is not just citing exactly what the person said, but it's citing what the gist of the research is all about. How can we focus on that? So it is important for you to know that when you cite, you need to cite in that manner. I did not use the word, I did not use the author found this here, the author found this there, which is nice for some, for one or two, where you that is the prominent thing, but it is more general that this is found in this area or in this region or in where, and that basically provide a background information to you on what is the gist of the idea that you want to share. And the author is not prominent in these two paragraphs because we are not trying to highlight the author of the paper. We're not trying to give the prominence to the author because we don't think that the giving prominence to the author for these two paragraphs would change the idea, would provide a better justification. But we did put in the father of occupational medicine, which is Bernardino Ramazzini, because he's the father of occupational medicine. That's why we put his name in. Other than that, we did not give prominence to any of the author. And you look at the author themselves, the main author or the first author, they are very prominent person in the field of musculoskeletal disorder, and that basically I know because some of them I do work with them. All right. So these are the citation. You can look at it and go through it. And this conclude the lecture on citation of earlier work, why you need to cite, how you cite. All right. And we did not discuss about different citation method, and that would basically be discussed or be in our lecture discussion session during the lecture. But we hope that you will understand what is the importance of citation, what do you mean by plagiarism, how do you cite properly, which part of the paper when you're reading should you get information from, and then look at how you don't actually just cite individual information from individual paper, but you try to combine the information from different paper talking about the same thing to provide better justification, to provide better support for your idea. Making mistake is better than faking perfection. I think that is very important for you to understand. You need to start to make mistake when you write and then present to and then share it with your supervisor so that we can actually correct your mistake. And perfect does not mean perfect action in perfect world, but appropriate action in imperfect world. That's also very, very good quote that you need you might need to remember. So thank you very much, and see you next time.